Okay, goodness. We just tested this thing a few minutes ago. Okay, let's just hang on a second here. I'm getting everything ready. Oh, okay, people. So can you guys hear me? I gotta turn that down. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Yes, sir. Okay. We literally just tested this like 30 minutes ago. So let me, and all of a sudden it did not work. So, but that's fine. We're good. I think everything's working now. I just got to make sure that I get my guest in here now. So stand by. I got to send him a message right now on how to join because that was crazy. Okay, just sent that to him. Okay. I don't know why you guys are looking at me. Let's share my screen here. Okay, everybody can see. Okay, good. Okay. We'll get started. I'm blurry. What the heck? Well, you don't. Am I blurry to you guys? Okay. Gosh. Let me know in the chat if I'm blurry. Let me see if our guest is on. Um, let me text him. I had to start a whole new meetup, guys. Just give us 1 second, and we be ready. Looks good to me. Okay, good. It's just blurry on this my IBM ThinkPad over here that is should be used as a boat anchor. Okay, I'm waiting. Okay, I can get started. Steve's going to jump in a few minutes. I apologize. We tested this an hour ago and everything worked perfect. And we're like, okay, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and make this so you don't see. Okay. Sent him a text. There will be a replay on this as well. And I did get messages from Joe and 15 other people saying that people are going to kill me. So it's good. Okay, we not blurry. Okay. Let me see. I'm sorry, guys. You know, look at my second slide, by the way. I'll put that up. Look at my second slide. So I'm going to invite. Well, let's don't. Yeah, let's. Okay. That is my second slide. That is crazy, isn't it? Okay, I am going to stop sharing for a second. And then I'm going to go right here to, yep. Oh, let me go to this page here. Council meetings. Okay, I think we got it. I think he's coming. Okay, people still joining. So yeah, this is going to be awesome, guys. This is going to be really good. Just want him to join and we'll get started. I got a few announcements and we're getting right into the gist of things, man. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on that you don't know about, that I don't know about. And as soon as Home Cheese gets in, I hate that you guys are watching me, but I'm trying to protect my screen a little bit. Okay. So I'm excited about this thing. Again, I apologize. We had it working. Ooh. Okay. He should be able to join, and yet he's not joining yet. You think this is my first time? It's not. It's not. I've done this many times, and yet I'm not going to take any responsibility for this. I can't do this without him. Okay, everybody tell me where you're from in the chat. We'll see where everyone's from. We'll get this thing started. My leader meetings go better than this. So he just texted me. I just sent him another email. We got Washington State, Middle Tennessee, Nashville, Michigan, Texas. Oh, Rusty, my leader in Texas, North Carolina, Greene County, Gary, I know Gary, Rhode Island, sweet, Charleston, South Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay, Steve is in the house. So Steve, I'm going to keep you on mute right now. Let me, can you hear me, Steve?
I can.
Okay, I'm going to put you on mute. I'll go through my stuff. We'll get this thing started, okay? Okay, so let me share my screen so you guys can see. Whoops, I don't want to share that screen. That would be my, I want to share this screen right here. Okay, guys. This is threats in the homeland. Now, there's a lot of stuff going all over, going crazy around the world, and that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But first, I want to tell you about, I kid you not, Murphy's Law. I'm trying some new things here. We actually did test this, and it worked. If you have any problems, I'm going to blame Facebook or Zoom. So there will be a replay. So when you get the replay, just if you want to, I mean, I should have told people, hey, just fast forward to this point. If you're not familiar, but PrepperNet is an organization that we connect preppers. We do it online through a software. We have PrepperNet Connect, and we do it through meetups. And we have meetups in right now 64 cities. And I am actually talking, I think we have 18 on the list. Not sure how serious all of them are, but we're talking with 18 of them, new cities right now. And here's a list of the cities. There may be one near you. They're in random order, actually. They're in the order that I actually put them in a spreadsheet. So there's the cities we're currently in. And you can go to Meetup and just type PrepperNet and then change the distance, and you can see all our meetups just listed down through there. And they're listed on preppernet.com as well. So just want to show you that. I mean, we got them, we're growing big time. When the week that we bombed and killed the guy in Iraq, I think the final count was like 700 people join preppernet.com. Don't know where they came from, but they did come. So one other quick announcement is Prepping Academy podcast is back. Kyle is risen from the, no, he hadn't. I didn't kill him. Everyone thought I killed him, but he is back. We have put out, I think, 3 podcasts. We're recording one tomorrow morning. But he's back, and everyone seemed to like Kyle. I can't stand Kyle. But no, I'm just kidding. And then Tenderfoot, my other co-host, he'll be back on as well. So, but just catch Prepping Academy. You can see all the little logos there. We may or may not be on all of them. I'm not sure. I just thought it was a lot of different places. Definitely iTunes. Another special announcement is a week from tonight, because all the health things going on, we're going to have a live broadcast, and hopefully it goes better than this. Hopefully we will actually get things right. But guess who's going to be back? Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy will come back next Thursday night. It's going to be every question answered. We'll stay on here as long as we can. But I want to show you that looks like they're mean. You know, they're good friends of mine, and I don't like that one. I like these two better. See how nice they look here? That's them on the left, and I think that was up in Asheville on the right with Doom and Bloom. But some of the things we're going to talk about is influenza. I mean, the virus that's sweeping the world, how to prevent it, supplies you need. That's going to be, again, next Thursday night, live, same time. And if you want to join about 9:15, I'll probably have everything right. I'm just kidding. But we're going to have them on live next week. I'll send out an email, and I'll post it on our Facebook site as well. So I hope you guys can make that. In the following week, we may even have someone else. We may do this every Thursday night until I get bored. Maybe not. But tonight, threats in the homeland. So I have a special guest tonight. You guys, some of you guys have heard him. I've had him on my podcast. We've never done a live stream, but Steve is the founder of Alerts USA. And if you don't know who Alerts USA, you haven't heard me in a podcast or a video before. I love Alerts USA. I know our city leader, Michael Klein. There's so many people that talk so great about Alerts USA. And what it is a texting service of that you get on your phone long before the normal news media picks it up. And so I just want to, and I'm going to bring Steve on right after this, but I do want to show you this is if you look, these are some of the agencies that actually use Alerts USA to get information. The Justice Department, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, all the military branches, they subscribe to Alerts USA because it is a great service. And the last thing I say before I'm going to bring on the man, the myth, the legend is this. And this is not what this is about. I promise. We want to do this. And then I thought, well, we do have a special discount for this. Is not, that was not the reason to bring Steve on. It is because we do, I'll let you know, we do, PrepperNet makes a little bit of money on this. It's an affiliate. but you can save $24 if you go to that URL. That was actually an afterthought. And when I showed this to Steve tonight, he's like, oh. And then he was like, well, that's not, anyway. So he was kind of surprised, but that was not the reason we did this. But anyway, with all that said, let me see if I know how to unmute Steve here. This technology, man, unmute. Hey, Steve, you there?
I am.
Awesome. I'm sure everyone can hear you. We got tens of millions of people online listening to us right now.
Gulp.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, people in this chat room are saying, yeah, Alerts USA is great. I'm a subscriber. Great service. They do an awesome job. That's just the 4 that I'm looking at right now. So, Steve, if you don't mind, first of all, and you know we go back and forth about this, but I need you to pronounce your last name. And then as you do that, tell us how you have founded Alerts USA, and then a little bit of your profile, and then we'll get into some real issues of today.
Okay, so first, I graciously appreciate the opportunity to come on chat with you again about current events, what's taking place around the world, and so on. Let me give a little background on the company. So Alerts USA, we're an 18-year-old company. We were started just a few months after 9/11. And the reason the company was started was when the first plane flew into the first tower over the PA system of the second tower. Most everybody didn't, unless you were facing out and saw the plane approaching. Few people really knew what had happened in the second tower. And they were told that there's no reason to evacuate. And so a lot of people perished as a result of that. And some friends and I, we were in discussions of this afterwards. It stood out pretty broad that there was a big void in information services, that terrorism attacks were starting to increase in tempo and so on. And we thought, now's the time to launch something like this. So put our heads together, started from a prone position, and stood up an alert service. And what we do is we monitor the world for threats against the US, as well as incidents of national significance. So terrorism threats, warnings, advisories, travel alerts to major international destinations, incident notification, and we'll, I'm sure, visit with a bunch of these different examples during the course of our discussion. And what we do is we monitor all this 24/7, 365, and when something is breaking, some incident takes place, some federal agency puts out an alert or warning, we send information direct to your mobile device via SMS messages, and then we follow up each of those SMS messages with a corresponding email, because it's easier to put the meat inside of an SMS message, but then we can dramatically expand on the details inside of the follow-up email. So you get the information that you need quickly, and if you want to follow up, then you can just look at the corresponding email that comes out. And most of the time there's something extra that's in there. And so I'll use as an example, over the last few days, we've had several alerts that have gone out regarding the situation in China. And the last one being that there's, I believe it's 8 cities now in China. There's travel restrictions. In essence, they've locked it down. All surface and air transportation is shut down in order to try and minimize the spread of the new coronavirus. And so this is what we do. We operate 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And as you've shown on some of the previous slides, we serve each of the branches of the armed forces, a number of federal agencies, a number of state, county, and municipal agencies, and a slew of just average citizens that want to know what's going on, but you just don't get information like what we put out through the mainstream media. And the stuff that does come out, it's very rarely comes out in a timely fashion. And so this is essentially what we do. My background, I've spent, prior to launching the company, spent quite a few years working for the Department of the Navy, Department of the Army, different elements of the intelligence community. And so I've been able to leverage that background into what we're doing now in terms of forming up relationships with the different agencies from whom we get information that we then propagate out to the customers. And that brings us to today.
So you do a lot and you get a lot of information out. The only complaint I've ever heard is that sometimes you'll publish things that they'll never see on the national news. Well, I went to the news and they never said anything about it. And I remember an incident, and I always bring this up. I was actually at Heritage Life Skills in Waynesville, North Carolina, and you sent out an alert about a CME hitting the United States. And the New York stock market was kind of shut down. Chicago had some problems. There were power outages. And I told everyone there, and everybody looked at me like, what? Are you crazy? And come to find out, no one had it on the nightly news. They just had the power outages. And it took about a week and a half for actually that news to come out that they thought it was from a CME hitting the United States. Do you remember that?
I do. Another really good example that has caused temporary tensions with people is during the Fukushima crisis, prior to the meltdowns, our subscribers found out 2 days in advance that there was going to be meltdowns in at least one of the reactors. I'll have to look back and see if we had it down for 2, but at least one. And the way that we found out was that the Japanese government was in touch with the State Department in order to be in touch with the NRC and the Department of Energy. And then we found out through the State Department that they had lost control of the cooling functions, and there was no way to recover that. And it was just merely a matter of time. So we put that out to our subscribers. And people were just whining, why isn't anybody reporting this? And so just give it time. And lo and behold, 2 of these things cook off. So,
right. Yep. Okay. So,
but we tend to be, one of the things that we tend to be very cautious about what we put out, given who we serve. A lot of the stuff the information that we handle, the information that we put out, it's often mission critical. And we would rather be slow in putting something out, but accurate, as opposed to mishandling the information, being sensationalistic, something like this, which in turn just causes a loss of trust in the product that we put out. So,
okay, I got one complaint. And on this list, it doesn't show PrepperNet as one of the services that subscribes. So we got to take care of that. I'm just kidding with you. So let's get into some bulletins here lately. There's been some new, terror advisories for the United States.
That's right. So just a few days ago, the Department of Homeland Security, and I haven't seen this anywhere on the news, but the Department of Homeland Security issued a new National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, which goes out to it's supposed to inform the general public. And this has to do with an enduring threat from Iran as a result of the strike that we carried out on the Quds Force commander, Qasem Soleimani, in Iraq. And this bulletin specifically states that in the near term, we remain concerned that violent extremist organizations tied to the regime of Iran, including their various partner organizations, may continue to pose a general threat against American citizens and interests both overseas and in the homeland. Now, even though Iran is quite a distance away, for the longest time, we've known that Hezbollah does operate in the United States as well as throughout Central and South America. Previous examples of Homeland-based plots have included, now just last year, they arrested one of Hezbollah's operatives who was scouting targets in New York, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. And you can find mention of this on the Department of Justice's website. There was an attempt to assassinate the ambassador to Saudi Arabia in 2011. And then there's been an ongoing stream of cyber-enabled attacks against US-based targets. And so this alert was put out to just keep the public informed about threats directly from those organizations or from Iran itself and not one of its proxies. But in addition, there's a widely used phrase now that it's homegrown violent extremists. And these are individuals that don't personally have any direct nexus to any foreign terrorist organization, but they're either a supporter or a follower of the ideology. And this nation is filled with people like this. And the Iranians are now using social media and end-to-end encrypted social media applications in order to try and inspire individuals already here in the homeland to carry out attacks. And as we cover on a weekly basis in the weekly updates that go out to the subscribers, that they encourage the people, you don't need to make a complex bomb in order to do stuff like this. Vehicle ramming attacks, edged weapons, firearms,
cyber.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so this, in summing this up, this National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin is going out just to try and keep the public informed, kind of try and remove the normal tendency to become complacent and not, for instance, you're going out to some large outdoor function, not paying attention to where your exits are, not paying attention to what's going on around you, and try and increase just the general level of situational awareness of the general public.
I would say in the last 10 years, it's probably right now a scarier time just to be in America because Iran is going to attack. And there's been, there's actually warnings of, them committing cyber terrorism or just plain, like you said, random shootings, driving over people.
And Iran knows that they don't stand a chance going toe-to-toe with the U.S. military. There's just no chance on earth that they're going to accomplish much. There might be a lot of booms. There might be a lot of people, especially in the Persian Gulf region. There might be a lot of mayhem there, but they just don't stand a chance against the might of the United States. But where they excel is asymmetric warfare. Everybody was waiting for Iran to come back with an attack shortly after Soleimani was knocked off. And this just isn't the way that Iran works. They take their time. It could be an embassy attack half a world away. It could be something that takes place here in the country. And they're good at the small pinpricks. And as a perfect example, prior to 9/11, there were more deaths of American citizens carried out at the hands of Iran than by any other foreign terrorist organization. And they were responsible for instance, the barracks bombing in Beirut, the Khobar Towers attack in Saudi Arabia. And so they have their ways to carry out attacks against the United States. That doesn't mean going toe-to-toe with the U.S. military.
Do they have the ability to really affect us through cyber terrorism? Do they have the brains?
They do.
They do?
They do.
Okay.
And so inside of this, matter of fact, inside of this this bulletin, that it specifically states that they are capable of carrying out attacks on, for instance, critical infrastructure. And so on, whether or not that could be shutting down a water plant or screwing around with the dam or bringing down part of a power grid or something like this, they definitely have the capability to do this. On the other side, though, we have exceptional cyber capabilities in order to, and we've been working, by we, I mean the US has been working extensively, not only at the federal level, but with industry stakeholders in order to secure these critical information systems that control these systems. And so, but the threat is definitely there. Definitely.
So what's some of the targets that we should be paying attention to and on high alert when we're out in public?
Any place. So I'll start at the very top and just give the broad definition for a soft target, which is anything that's lightly defended. You could take, for example, the upcoming Super Bowl. This is what's referred to as a special national security event. Typically, the Secret Service is the lead agency in securing the event. And just the layers of security that go on at something like that, it quite literally is a hardened target. You can't get near the stadium, with automobiles, anything like that, closed airspace and all that. That's one end that, you'd have to be a fool to try something because there's so much law enforcement out, people watching and so on. On the other side, undefended targets, gatherings, and so on. And so, for instance, I'll refer back to the past holiday, outdoor holiday markets, shopping centers, places of worship, schools. In terms of critical infrastructure, powers, it could be something as simple as the neighborhood power substation or a dam, a water treatment plant, a water reservoir. And so, it's keeping your eyes open. Most people, when they see something, their gut or their brain will register DLR. It just doesn't look right. Something that falls out of the norm. And you'll start to see stuff like this if you're actually looking forward and not down at your iPhone as you're walking around, listening to tunes and so on, but paying attention to what's going on around you. You'll start to pick up on the flow of the environment and things that stand out on it. But in all of these things, with all of the things that we are talking about, if you are going to be out in public, you're going into places, be it a mall, a movie theater, something like this, get into the habit of making sure that you identify where the entrances and exits are in every place that you're going. And remembering that the entrances can also be used as an exit. It doesn't have to have an exit sign directly above it, but knowing how to get out of closed spaces is always a great habit to be in.
So today on alert, and it was kind of interesting that they arrested 3 people from Al Qaeda in the United States.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So there were 3 guys who are known to be tied with the Syrian branch of Al Qaeda that tried to fly into Dallas from Colombia with fake Colombian passports. And they were arrested at the airport in Dallas. And it's turned out that there were, I guess it was a batch of passports, Colombian passports that were stolen. And these 3 passports that these guys were using were from that batch that was stolen. And so when it was known that the batch of the passports had been stolen, everybody around is informed of this. And so if you try and cross an international border and they scan the passport and so on, you're going to get caught. And but the fact that these fellows were trying to get in through Colombia, and it was known that they had, prior to being in Colombia, they were in Venezuela, is a scary concept because the Maduro regime in Venezuela is known to harbor and work with foreign terrorist organizations. In particular, talk to any federal law enforcement agency or law enforcement agent and ask them whether or not the Hezbollah threat in Venezuela is real. And they'll give you a big debrief with a smile on their face. It's very real. As a matter of fact, the former head of the House Homeland Security Committee, recently made some statements to this effect, that this is one of the most significant threats to the U.S. homeland, is Hezbollah, that's operating down in South America. And they're known to also work with the Mexican drug cartels in different revenue generating activities, the money from which is then turned and sent back to their larger umbrella organizations. And so this isn't pie in the sky stuff. If your listeners were just to go to Google and type Hezbollah in America, Hezbollah in South America, you'd find oodles of information to quench your quest for knowledge about just how significant this threat is.
Yeah, it's again, I think it's one of the scarier times that we've dealt with. I hope this let's see that we've dealt with in years. And China is going nuts over there with a virus. Tell us what you know about that and what's going on, and how. And also, after you sum that up, I mean, what's America going to do? What's the United States plan? I mean, you chat with these guys all the time, so hit us up. What's going on?
So yesterday I had an extended conversation with a fellow by the name of Dr. Stephen Hatfill. Now this conversation was a recorded conversation with him that will be coming out in this coming weekend's issue of our Threat Journal newsletter, which is a free giveaway. Go to threatjournal.com, sign up on Saturdays, you get the newsletter from us. We also do a podcast. And this conversation with Hatfill, he's an American physician, virologist, and a former biodefense researcher for USAMRIID, which is the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland. His medical fellowships were at Oxford University, National Institutes of Health. He's a leading researcher in Ebola, Marburg virus, monkeypox. He's absolute top shelf virologist. And we were talking about the situation over in China. And he's nervous about this, in that just like Ebola, when you have human populations that live in close proximity to a lot of wild animals, and those wild animals are actually part of the diet of that culture, you're going to have diseases that jump. And just as, for instance, with the Ebola virus coming from, I believe this last outbreak was traced back through to fruit bats, which is considered a delicacy in Guinea and some parts of Sierra Leone. They're still trying to figure out where this particular coronavirus came from, but it's believed to possibly be tied to either bats or snakes. The SARS virus came from the civet cat, which is considered a delicacy in China. And anybody that's been to Southeast Asia, China, Taiwan, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, they have what's called wet markets. And so you go into these wet markets where you can pick up super fresh vegetables, but you'll also have a variety of different animals that can be butchered in front of you, and you walk out with the parts in a plastic bag. And when you have tons of people that are going through these things, all these different types of animals that are being butchered up, people handling the meats back and forth, and so on. It's just a very unsanitary environment, and it's a petri dish for strange diseases to emerge from. And so the last alert that we sent out, as we mentioned earlier, it's I believe it's 8 cities now have been all surface transportation and air transportation has been shut down in order to try to minimize the spread of it. One of the big problems with this the coronavirus this time through is that it's happening right at the start of the Chinese Lunar New Year celebrations. And this is particularly scary in that Chinese New Year is the largest annual migration of human beings on the planet. During last year's celebrations, it's estimated that 2.2 billion trips were made by automobile, 400 million by rail, and 73 million by air to different points around the globe during Chinese New Year. I mean, literally the entire Southeast Asian world shuts down for at least a week. And people go and gather with their families, big celebrations and so on, big public events. And this, given that the virus is appearing to be quite highly infectious, they're worried about it being spread extensively, not only within China, but around the globe as the people then start to head home. And because it's got an incubation period, you don't start to become symptomatic for about a week minimum after you've been infected. And so public health departments across the United States and around the world are kind of cringing right now. The World Health Organization is in scramble mode, trying to figure out how to marshal up and get the health departments of the nations around the world to be working together to screen passengers that are getting onto planes prior to them getting on, screening passengers that are getting off the planes, trying to route air traffic through to major hubs. And so, for instance, earlier in the week, it was announced that the US is screening passengers coming from China at 5 different airports in the US, which are Seattle, LAX, San Francisco, Chicago, and Atlanta. And they'll be setting up, if they haven't done it already, thermal cameras that just watch the people flow by. And if you're running a fever, you're going to stand out. They'll pull you to the side, interview you by a public health official, and try and just get people before they get on the plane in the closed environment with the dehumidified air.
But how does that work when it takes days for some of the symptoms to show up?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The big challenge is once somebody in the early phases of epidemics, once somebody is identified with a virus, they then start to do contact tracing where, okay, where did you go? Who have you been in personal touch with? And then they go out to those individuals in those locations and continue to spread out doing contact tracing until they can identify everybody that had been potentially exposed and they can monitor them.
And that's what they did in Washington. The gentleman there, I think he's around 30 years old. They've got, if I don't remember the number, it's in the
200 people.
In quarantine?
Not in quarantine, but there's
in
200 people that he came in contact with.
Dang, I know. And they have almost 20 in some kind of isolation or something. I remember that. And then and then I'll let you, one more thing is in Texas, there's a person that they think, or they're suspicious, they're looking into that he may have it as well.
Actually, there's 3. There's one in College Station, okay, and then there's 2 closer down to the border. And they're monitoring the people right now. The testing on this is can be done pretty quick, and so I don't know if they're just withholding the information or waiting for the person to become more symptomatic. But
and you're talking about a disaster. I mean, a pandemic. If this spreads into states after state after state, people will stop sending their kids to school. People will stop going to work. The economy will slow down. There's a lot of things that could happen if this gets a little bit out of hand.
It can have a serious impact on, just like in the things that you mentioned there. These types of interventions are the way that epidemics and pandemics are dealt with. It's the most effective way is isolation, to keep people from gathering in crowds, which means that, it is what it is. If it starts to spread in the country, then you might have to pull the kids out of school for a while, or maybe not go to church. where it's all huggy, handshakes and so on. And
But you can go to prepper meetings. They're safe.
they call these things non-clinical interventions, and this is the less pushback that people have towards stuff like this, and the more that they heed if directives like that are given out. If it can be done, then this is what ultimately allows public health authorities to get on top of the problem. But if it does start to spread widely in the U.S. and you have a lot of people that are going down with respiratory infections where you need to be hospitalized and potentially be on a respirator, this is where we really start to run into a problem in that beds or hospitals only have so many beds and hospitals have only so many respirators. And once they fill up, then problems start. Even in the strategic national stockpile of medical equipment and so on that DHS and everybody has put together over the years, so on, doesn't come close to meeting what the needs would be in a pandemic type of situation.
But is our health organization, is it ready? I mean, we haven't had anything like this in years and years and years, but
1918 flu was the last big one.
Are we ready for, I mean, it seems like we would be, as a nation, as a government, more prepared.
The answer to your question is a resounding no, we're not. Now, at the federal level, there's been significant amounts of money and effort put into, for instance, getting the strategic national stockpile of medications and medical equipment and all that stuff put together. There's been a lot of training that has been given, a lot of money that's been given to local municipalities and so on. But that's where the weak links start to show up, is when you start to get down to the state and local level, getting these, the different municipalities to be able to put together local plans where the different municipalities are working together, being able to rely on each other. That's where the things really start to fall apart. The federal government, they can push a lot of equipment out there and so on, but if the people on the local level aren't dealing with the equipment and the resources correctly and in a planned out manner, then you're going to have a lot of people that are suffering. And unfortunately, that is the current state of affairs. Matter of fact, Steve Hatfill talks about this in detail in the podcast this weekend. He's got a fascinating new book that's out right now. It's available on Amazon. That's called 3 Seconds Until Midnight. And it looks at the history of pandemics and the woeful state of preparedness for one in the United States. And this is a pretty substantial book. And it's written with two other leading authorities. But again, the title's 3 Seconds Until Midnight. It's well worth the read if you want to better understand pandemics, the way that they're dealt with, and where we stand as a nation right now in being able to deal with it.
Okay, so I saw in China this evening that they were blocking cities, the roads, they were blocking the trains, they were literally going around these cities, which millions of people in, and not letting anyone in or anyone out. In America, that would be, I mean, people would die. I mean, people would get their guns out. I mean, it's just, I'm not sure America could ever do that. I'm not sure. I mean, that would be, could you imagine if you're on your way home and they're blocking the city so you can't get to your house because they're quarantining these people as a city? They're closing the city. That is nuts.
Yeah, I can't see you doing something like that with, for instance, Chicago or Detroit or LA. Let's say that you have, a massive outbreak of something, I can't see you doing it with a large metropolitan area like that, but I can definitely see this taking place. For instance, the municipality within which I live down in Texas, we're a community of approximately 10,000 people. And I know, because there's basically two ways in and out of this town that if the threat was great enough, the sheriff down here would easily have this town sealed off, not letting anybody, law enforcement on both the bridges, and that would be that until the situation passed. But in larger municipalities, it would be particularly challenging to do that.
And see, Americans, we love our freedom. We're not going to stand for that. We're going to get out of Dodge, and they're not going to let us.
See, but again, I think that all of this goes back to the situation with the preparation of on the local level, that if all this really is, this situation is a sales job. If the public health officials and the community leaders are communicating the absolute need to be able to do this with the local residents, not throwing a bunch of BS, just being straight with the people. This is a highly infectious situation. We've got to slow down the movement of people coming into this community and potentially infected people in the community getting out. This is why we're doing it. Most people are pretty reasonable to stuff like that. But it's when you don't share the information and try to dictate in situations like this, this is where you're going to run headlong into a wall.
Right. Okay. So as preppers and, homesteaders, survivalists, we should have some of these, some prep. We should have food. One of the first things, if a community knows that the virus is spreading in their, let's say, if it's Dallas, Texas, one of the first things people are going to do is go to the grocery store. They're going to go to the drugstore, and they're going to start buying the things that they think that their family is going to need.
Milk and bread.
Yeah, in case this gets worse. They're going to buy the N95 mask. I'm not even sure if N95 would, I guess it would stop the virus. I'm not sure about that. That's Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy next week. We'll ask them. But people are going to start doing that. They're doing this in China right now. And I was looking at some reports, and people lined up. People were, you mentioned the fact that people were in China were at the hospitals around the corner just to get into the hospital.
Yeah, this would be an interesting exercise for those that are listening, is to go to Twitter and type in the hash symbol or the pound symbol and the word coronavirus and hit the return button. And then start to look at the images and video that's being posted from people in China, in Wuhan, and in Beijing, and in Shanghai, and the pictures of the outsides of the hospital where you've got thousands of people lined up with masks, people fighting, people, on the floor, people passing out inside of the hospitals. And you'll see that the information that's coming out is very different than what we're being told by federal and international health authorities. For instance, they were saying this evening that I think it's like 860 confirmed cases in China. I'm sorry, that when you see what's online and the imagery and the videos in particular and what's happening outside of the hospitals, it makes that swallowing that story just a little bit difficult.
I don't think the headline news has been having numbers that high. I remember at like 6, some of the numbers were like only like 40 some people have died nationwide from this or something. Is that correct? And you're saying it's a lot higher?
Much higher. So let's see. At 4:13 this afternoon, I sent an SMS message to Dr. Hatfill, who I was just discussing. Chinese government just raised their official number to 830 infections and 25 deaths.
Okay.
And that's just China. They've got confirmed cases in Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Singapore, Australia, Canada, the US, suspected cases in Mexico. There's confirmed cases in Saudi Arabia. I think a couple European nations have people under observation that they suspect may have it. So it's already starting to reach globally.
And the problem is, just like the dude in Washington State, you said he was in contact with 200 people before they knew what he had.
Well, the contact tracers say that they have thus far identified 200 people with whom he has had contact. And there's probably a lot more, if any public transportation, going into any public place, going into a Starbucks, for instance, while you're viral shedding, touching different surfaces and all that stuff. So there's probably a lot more.
Okay.
On this, I need to be really clear that we're not at any point at an alarm state here in the US. If we start to see a lot more cases, then it's time to start being ultra concerned. And we may in fact get there, but right now, people just need to be paying attention. Like you were talking about earlier, acquiring some basic preparedness items, which are good to have around the house anyhow. Get some N95 masks, get some some surgical gloves, the nitrile gloves that you can get, $6, you get a box of 100 of them at Walmart. Consider some of the Hibiclens liquid soap that, in addition to being great for cleaning all the EBGBs off your hand, it also leaves a microbial layer on your skin that continues to destroy potential contaminants and whatnot for a number of hours afterwards. And, just start paying attention. People start getting sick, watch your kids really close, watch the schools that your kids are in that if there's any of the kids in the schools start getting sick, get your kids out, because any parent will tell you that the schools are petri dishes, and the different types of infections pass easily in there. And if kids got to be pulled out, the kids got to be pulled out for a few weeks. That's
Yeah, I forgot. My friend Charlie Hogwood just wrote a book about a pandemic. It was an awesome book. Book number 2 is coming out soon, but you guys look up Charlie Hogwood. It's a fiction book, but he wrote the book on survival groups, but it's on a pandemic and how it starts in one city. Also, my friend Robert Bradyansky, I think it's called, the first book you can look up. It's A.R. Bradyansky, and he talks about a pandemic that starts in my neighborhood, which is weird because he wrote the book before I met him. And it happens within a mile of where I used to live, and all the scenes are right around the Charlotte area. It's really good. He really gets into the vulgar scene, and not the vulgar, but you see everything. If a guy's head gets shot, he details it out for you. But great book series as well on pandemics.
if I could address the Alert USA subscribers on this. So we are in touch with federal and state health authorities across the U.S. We have an excellent means to be able to keep up with these different groups, to find out the truth about any U.S. cases that are taking place. And you folks will probably be some of the best informed in the United States. No hysterics. Just when new cases are identified in the U.S., confirmed in the U.S., we'll for sure let you know, so that if it's happening in your community, that you'll know to peak your situational awareness. And for those of you that aren't Alert USA subscribers, give it a whirl. It's an excellent way to stay informed, and far better informed than if you are just paying attention to the broadcast media, which is just it's not even journalism anymore. And plus, it's not their job to report on stuff like this. News agencies, they are their business is selling advertising. The mechanism through which they sell the advertising is something that they call news. But every story is selected and crafted in order to draw the biggest audiences, through which they're then able to charge the best premium for their advertising time. And if you look at the mainstream media like that, this is what's going to dictate what they're covering. And so right now, with the impeachment thing that's going on right now, that's tending to draw pretty large audiences. And so you're not getting a lot of coverage on things like this.
Right. Yep. And guys, just think, this is the scariest time, the most alert time we've had in years. I'm being serious with the things going on with Iran is going to possibly, send out some terrorist cells or attack the U.S. We got a pandemic right in our backyard. I mean, I'm not saying that this is something we should get excited about, but this is some of the things that we've prepared for and we've talked about for years. And all of a sudden, it's been kind of calm on the home front of the USA. And all of a sudden, boom, some things are happening. And, our government, the shift show up there, things are kind of getting a little interesting in an election year at that.
And adding to this, so we were talking earlier about the National Threat Advisory System Bulletin that was sent out for the general public. So there's a completely different set of alerts and advisories that go out to law enforcement. And just in the last few days, the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and the National Counterterrorism Center issued a joint intelligence bulletin to law enforcement warning themselves that Iran could directly or through proxies and partners carry out attacks in the homeland, and they're urging vigilance to law enforcement. Then you have the National Counterterrorism Center, which was warning law enforcement agencies nationwide that police and emergency services remain key targets for terrorists, including by luring them into ambushes. And there's a number of instances where that has, in fact, taken place. One instance in Philadelphia a couple of years ago was pretty significant. They made a call in, a cruiser was sent, and when the officer starts to pull up to the scene, the guy jumps out and starts unloading into the police car. And so the law enforcement and other first responders, they're being advised to, and those who are first responders and so on, you can very easily go to your command and ask that they start to retrieve these bulletins from the Department of Homeland Security and FBI and National Counterterrorism Center, and so that you can read them and read the recommendations that they provide in there in order to minimize your risk when you're rolling up onto a scene. And I strongly encourage all law enforcement, doesn't matter how small of a town you might be or how large, if you're not seeing these bulletins, these joint intelligence bulletins that are coming out from DHS, FBI, and NCTC, you're really behind the curve in terms of understanding what's going on out there. And so I would encourage everybody to reach out to their command and say, you got to start getting these things.
Yeah, and that's where your service, and again, this was not to be a sales thing, but it's just the truth of the matter is your service gives us alerts long before the news organizations. Now, sometimes you've done a couple and you start out with the alert going, well, rumor has it, or we've heard, or
I don't think we've ever used that word rumor has it.
Okay. Not rumor has it, but you have released, I remember one, it was a couple months ago, and then you retracted the actual statement. That happened one time. Now, we
have adjusted
Okay, adjusted. Okay.
what we've reported. So for instance, we always try to lowball stuff. If we know for a fact that 6 people have been shot in some incident that we've reported on, we'll say 4. Or if, we always try to lowball stuff because it's okay if there's an upside
Right.
to figures like this. It's not okay if it has to be dramatically reduced. And sometimes our sources are wrong in terms of like casualty figures and things like that. And in those instances that were wrong or that the figures were incorrect, we're always happy to adjust what's been sent out so that our customers have the correct information. But I think in the 18 years that we've been in operation, I probably couldn't count the number of times on 2 hands that we've ever done that. So because we tend to be, we're hypersensitive and hyper careful in verifying our information prior to sending out all the alerts.
Okay, so we got a virus coming. We got Iran ticked off at us. We got Al Qaeda members were arrested in America.
Another one that we sent out, if I can jump in here.
Yes, go right ahead.
So U.S. military installations across Europe are on high alert due to intelligence pointing to a potential imminent attack on military persons stationed in Germany. So we were tipped off to this by a source in the Department of Defense, and it's believed that this was tied to Iran. So there's that one. Alert USA customers were informed of that. Another one that really, that kind of deviates off the track of all that we've been discussing so far, but the listeners may have heard about the big gaping security flaw that was discovered in Windows in the last week. This is pretty interesting. So this vulnerability in Windows was discovered by the National Security Agency. Very rarely does NSA come out and reveal when they find holes and bugs like that. Because it's to their best interests in their overall mission that they keep it quiet, and they use that to, for instance, exploit the computers of our adversaries. This one was bad enough that they actually informed the Department of Homeland Security, who in turn informed Microsoft, and Microsoft then produced a patch. And so if you're using literally any version of the Windows operating system, it's well worth the time if you don't keep the patches on your operating system up to date. Look into this most recent vulnerability. And if you're using a vulnerable version of Windows, patch it.
Let me go one step further. Get a Mac. I'm just saying, once you go Mac, you'll never go back.
Yeah.
Get a Mac. Why are you using Windows? It's crazy. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
No, I agree with you, but there are tens of millions of people in the United States and hundreds of millions around the world that are just as passionate about the Windows operating system as you are about the Mac. And they need to be sensitive to this flaw that's been discovered in it. I must be, never mind. I'm not even going to go there. So I was expecting you to say something.
Yeah. Everyone knows I'm a Mac guy. So let's see. Is there any other? Let me see here on my notes. How about the police officers? Isn't there some threats against, like, if I remember, they're soft targets. Our first responders, our policemen, and I would think that if you're one of them, I would be on high alert, is what I'm saying, in every situation you go in, because they want to instill terror in everyday life And did you not send something out about that, or am I just making that up?
Yeah, we just covered that.
Oh,
It was
okay.
a bulletin from the National Counterterrorism Center warning
Okay.
law enforcement that police and emergency services remain
Yes.
key targets for terrorists,
Yeah.
including by luring them into different ambush situations.
Yep. Okay. And then how's the wildfires? Are they going to affect US at all in Australia?
The smoke is apparently reaching around the globe, but I would think that I can't imagine that it's going to impact us anything more than something possibly being in our air.
How about Charlotte, North
It's in a
Carolina?
different hemisphere,
Right.
quite a distance away. And I would be amazed if even the smoke made it up to the United States. But
Well, how about Ground Zero, Charlotte, North Carolina, for the GOP convention?
wasn't that a beautiful thing, man? You know, just every law-abiding armed citizens getting together, standing up for their rights. No major hassles whatsoever. Watching the left just, you know, come unglued. That it went as peacefully as it did.
Right. No, I agree with that. But I was talking about the Republican National Convention is coming up, and the elections are coming up. But that's going to be in Charlotte, the Republican convention, and we expect chaos here. I really do.
Yeah, think about what actually federal, state, county, and municipal law enforcement agencies across the U.S. are. They're consciously aware of potential for violence in the run-up to the next election. If you think about what hangs in the balance, so if President Trump wins another term, he's likely to have one, if not two, Supreme Court seats to fill. That in turn brings some of the core pillars of the left under threat. For instance, abortion. You get another two conservative judges on the bench there, abortion's gone. And it's just a matter of time before that, if we get more conservative justices on the Supreme Court, that will be one of the major changes that we will likely see brought before the court. And then there's the ongoing, you know, if the Republicans are able to capture both the House and the Senate and the White House, you're going to see rapidly the wall finished on the southern border and loads of major changes to U.S. immigration policy. These are just two examples of the things that hang in the balance with the next election. And it's expected that there's going to be a lot of violence in the closer that we get. Violence at political rallies, demonstrations, and just the normal crap that goes on at the different political conventions and all that. And so, yeah, just more to keep on your radar.
Yep. Well, is there any other topics? If not, I'm going to just kind of wrap things up about before I do that. Any other things? I mean, there's a lot of things we need to have our eyes open to and understand that a few of these things could really affect us with our plans and our provisions and, you know, some of the, because we're all preppers here that we've been thinking about for years. They're right at our doorstep. And if you haven't, like you said, if you haven't got some provisions, you need to start doing some work. But any more news or anything else you want to share before I kind of go in a little rant about people having supplies?
Well, this is all of this is with the current threat environment facing the country, not only from Iran and the flu or the coronavirus, political tensions and so on, but there's, as was demonstrated today in Dallas, Al-Qaeda is still a threat. They are still intent on carrying out attacks in the homeland and against U.S. citizens and interests abroad. Same thing with the Islamic State. They're still pretty angry. With these groups, while we have been extremely effective in diminishing their ability to carry out complex attacks overseas, the conditions that allowed for these groups to arise in the first place still exist. And their ability to harness social media in order to try and inspire followers here in the homeland to carry out attacks, these are all still, it just adds to the complexity of the environment that we're in. Where I'm leading with this is that for the men out there, this is an absolutely ideal opportunity to be faithful, strong leaders for your families, keeping them informed, keeping them safe, and all that. And
That's good, because I thought you were going to say go out and buy a gun.
no, I was just this is an absolutely ideal time for men to, and the people that would be following your group anyhow, they are real men. The giving forethought to caring for themselves and their families and their well-being and all that stuff. But this is just an absolutely ideal time with all of this different doom that's in the air to be phenomenal, loving leaders of your families and telling them, exactly what's happening, but engaging them and pulling them into the process of preparing and so on. And it's just an ideal opportunity to demonstrate manhood.
Okay,
by doing these things.
Yeah, you're being nice. Let me say it, and because I know your heart too. It is time to know who you serve. It is time to know that who the Lord is of the earth, and put your faith in Him. I talk about that, my faith on here all the time, but it is time. It's time for families, for us to step up. We got to protect our families. We're called. I'm a Christian. The Bible says, if I cannot take care of my family, I am worse than the unbeliever. So being a prepper and putting provisions back and standing up for your family and carrying a gun to protect your family, we are called to do that from the scriptures. We're worse than the unbeliever if we can't take care of our family. And that also means protecting our family from diseases, from viruses, from everything that we can think of. I am in charge of my family. It is my responsibility. And you know what? I take on that responsibility, and it's a heavy burden because I love my family, and as we all do. And so that's just the truth of the matter. So
And the truth of the matter also is that for whether you're married or you're single, the ladies gravitate towards leaders, men that are leaders and so on. So, in addition to doing what you're supposed to be doing, the ladies also really like it too when guys step up into a leadership role. And
Yep.
So thank you for
thanks for being on.
The opportunity to come on and chat with you. Any time that we can, any way that we can find for our organization to interact with yours and so on, to help further your mission in what you're doing, all you got to do is reach out and ask.
And well, you've been a good friend. We've I've dropped the ball a few times on some projects we were going to do.
We're carbon-based life forms, man. Everybody does it.
Yeah, and I've connected you with people, and you've connected, and it's been a good relationship. And I appreciate your friendship, and I like getting that text before the whole world. Oh, well, actually, that's never happened. But the bomb is coming. See, if I could get that 3 minutes before everyone else, that would make me feel really special, by the way. I'm just kidding. So, but Steve, thank you for coming on. Guys, I have the linked up there again. If you want the Alert USA, again, you know, if you, whatever, I don't care. But I do want to make sure you guys do know that next Thursday is Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy is going to be live with us. And, you know, every time we seem to get together on the internet, it lasts. I finally have to tell them, okay, I've got to go, because they love talking and answering your questions. But that's next Thursday. Sorry we couldn't do it quicker, but we will be on next Thursday. Oh, and by the way, they do have a great podcast they just posted on Facebook on our page about viruses. You can get a head start and maybe listen to that of how to protect your family, medicines you may need, items you may need. And we're going to talk that in great detail next Thursday. But I haven't listened to that podcast. I think they just posted it today or yesterday. But go check that out. If you can't, I think it's on our Facebook site, on our Facebook page. And if it's not, go to, you know, your podcast software, whatever you use. It's there, I'm sure. And that's Doom and Bloom, by the way.
You know, there is a link on your website, on the PrepperNet website, to the Alert USA
Oh yeah,
page.
I've posted.
So instead of trying to pull it off the visual from this
right,
the visual site here, just go to preppernet.com and you'll see the link there.
Yep, absolutely. For that's Alert USA. So, hey, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. And sorry for we practiced this. And then, I mean, I told people that we practiced and it worked great. And then when it was time to go, that's why I don't know why I had the Murphy's Law in there.
It's all good, brother. Have a
Okay.
good night.
Yes, you too. Thank you, sir. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. So you know, you need food. You need some medicine. You need some N95 masks. Go down to, I mean, you should have this in your preps. This is prepping for a pandemic is not very expensive. N95 masks, you can get an entire box for probably, I'm thinking $20, $30. I'm not sure. It's not expensive. So the gloves from Walmart, from different places, $12 max. But I would get some plastic, like paint plastic, some duct tape. You can also get the I think they're called Teflon, not Teflon, Tyvek suits. Go ahead and get that. I mean, you can get all the stuff I'm talking about for less than $150. Grab that, have it in your stash. You might not need it this time. One day you may. But that should be in your prep. So we're going to talk about that in great detail next Thursday night with Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy. It's going to be at the same bat channel, same bat time. And chat it up on PrepperNet Facebook. Share. So that's it, guys. You guys are awesome. And I hope this was beneficial. And you guys take care. We're out.